Hey, everybody, welcome to the Body, Soul, and Spirit podcast. I'm excited to be with you guys today. I want to talk about a topic that is so crucial to healing. I want to talk about something that will get you on the right journey to being whole and continue to grow emotionally and continue to grow mentally and grow in all aspects of your life. And there are two key words that I want to challenge you in today and get you thinking about when it comes to healing, when it comes to maybe trauma or loss that you've been through or experienced or are experiencing, and you maybe are facing some kind of wound in your life and you haven't quite crossed the bridge, so to speak, where now it's become a scar, but you're on the journey to heal that wound and heal it properly. And that's something that I've said when I've spoken to crowds, that something that me personally, as I have a relationship with God, one of the things that I prayed is that I wanted to heal and heal well. And there are two key words that I'm going to just really focus in on today, because these two words are vital and crucial to development, to growth, to maturity, and on the journey to healing and healing well. There are two things that happen in our lives when we have had traumatic events, when we've been wounded, when we're carrying a wound even from our childhood. There are two things that will show up in our lives that are necessary to evaluate. And I want to get you guys to start thinking in terms of number one, attitude. Your attitude, believe it or not, is going to determine whether or not you're going to heal correctly. Your attitude is and has everything to do with whether or not you're going to cross the bridge and get to the other side of this beautiful place called healing. The attitude that we display during this process of healing, the attitude that we have, will determine whether we will remain stuck or we will move and press forward. When you think of the word attitude, it has various synonyms and so many definitions. When you think of the word attitude, it comes from the word viewpoint. It comes from the word your frame of mind. It comes from the word opinion, your idea, your stance, your position, your feelings, your sentiments, right? It's your angle. So it has a lot to do with thoughts, and it has a lot to do with your thinking. Attitude means the feeling or the behavior that is occurring in someone's life as a result of the thoughts and the thinking patterns that one has. Attitude also means interpretation. So, believe it or not, but your attitude during this season of healing has a lot to do with you coming out of this painful situation, or coming out of this process where you are learning, right, a lot of stuff about yourself on this journey to healing. But your attitude has a lot to do with it. We don't really think about that very much when it comes to attitude, because oftentimes we can look at attitude, right, and say, well, I have a right to be upset and I have a right to be angry. And although those are emotions can be normalized, because maybe we do have a right to be angry after a wound, we have a right to be upset, right? It's normal. I don't want to say right. Maybe it's normal to feel those things. It's normal to feel anger, right? It's not normal to be happy after a betrayal. That's not normal. It's normal to feel angry afterwards. However, it's normal to go process that emotion correctly, right? And I typically do it in God's presence. That is the best uh, method, if you will, strategy. That is the best place to process your emotions, in God's presence. But we don't give it much thought when we come out maybe of prayer or of intimacy with God, of how our attitude is. Oftentimes we think, well, I have a normal response to this situation. I'm hurt, I'm depressed, etc., etc., and you can name 1,000 emotions, right, as to how you feel about it. But I don't want us to get stuck in that where we normalize the feeling and then we disregard the attitude, because your attitude is going to help you heal in an accelerated way. So when you think of the word attitude, I want to ask you these questions. Attitude. What is your attitude towards loss? What is your attitude towards betrayal? What is your attitude towards somebody that hurt you? What is your attitude towards the trauma that you went through as a child? What is your attitude toward a false expectation? Somebody maybe did something or did not do something, and you expected them to do something. You expected them to do something and they didn't. Or maybe they did do something that you didn't expect. How's your attitude towards that? How's your attitude when it comes to losing a loved one? What is your attitude when it comes to maybe you had hopes and you wanted your life to go in a particular direction and it didn't go in that direction? What is your attitude? Attitude, believe it or not, is key to getting you across the bridge and getting you to heal correctly. So think about your attitude. What is your thinking? So think of the definitions that I gave you earlier. What is your way, your outlook, your way of thinking about the situation? How do you view it? How do you see it? But it also means the feelings that are associated with it. So attitude is your behavior. Because believe it or not, whenever we encounter loss or whenever we encounter some form of grief, maybe you're grieving the loss of some relationship, you're grieving the loss of a loved one, you're grieving the loss of a family member, you're grieving the loss, you lost something, maybe a job, a career, a pet. Grief is grief, loss is loss. You lost something, you lost maybe during these holidays, right? You lost maybe that uh, communion that you had once with your family. Maybe you lost a loved one and they're no longer with you, therefore the holidays feel very empty and very lonely. Okay, what's your attitude towards that? How do you feel about that, right? Because there's going to be a response. Now when you have loss, loss has losses. But when you have loss, there are three responses to loss, three responses to grief. And this is important to understand, because if we don't understand that there are responses, then we might be responding in a way that we are not conscious of our attitude. We just think it's normal behavior because of what we've been through. But I want you to start thinking in terms of attitude. What is your attitude while you're healing? So, how do you see it? Now, these three responses, one of them is cognitive, okay? A cognitive response. We all respond cognitively when it comes to grief. We all respond to loss in a cognitive way. What do I mean by that? We all respond in a way of thinking. So, what is your thoughts? That is going to determine your attitude. So, if you look at loss from a very negative standpoint, more than likely your attitude, your behavior, the way you respond cognitively is not going to be very positive. Think about your attitude, because the way you view it, the way you see it, has a lot to do with the way the attitude is going to go. So think about your stance, your position, think about how you're reacting towards it, and if you say, well, I'm not really reacting really well towards this, then maybe we need to adjust the way you think about it. Maybe you need to reframe it. Maybe you need to look at it from a different way. Let's say, for example, and I'll use my own personal story, you lose somebody. Rather than looking at it from a standpoint of just constant loss and it being unfair, or looking at it from a place of, you did something wrong, or why did God do this? You can reframe it and you can look at it in a way where maybe, according to the book of Isaiah, there's a scripture that says that God takes good people home early because he was protecting them. So we really don't know the future, so I can reframe it. Well, maybe you maybe have gone through a divorce. Nobody likes divorce. Nobody wants to get married and then later on find themselves in divorce. So maybe your attitude towards that could be bitter towards men or bitter towards women, right? Maybe you could reframe it and just say, I'm not certain. And we may not have all the answers as to why, but I can reframe it. I could say maybe there was something in the future that would have been harmful. Maybe this is better for the children, et cetera, et cetera. Reframe where you're at. Start looking at the positives. Start looking at the good things that can come out of this. Because on the other side of that bridge is something beautiful and amazing waiting for you. So you almost have to reframe what and how you're telling that story. And that is important. Why? Because that's going to determine your attitude. So you might have to have a sit down with yourself and look at your attitude. How has your attitude been? How are the feelings associated with those thoughts that are now turning into your behavior, how you behave? Do you find yourself moody? Do you find yourself shutting down? What's your attitude? Does somebody ask you, how are you? Because they have well intentions for you and you just brush them off and you just say, I'm fine. You want nobody near you. How's your attitude? If you look at your attitude, that's a good reflection of whether or not you're headed in a healing direction or whether you're getting stuck. So that's the first one. You got to break off all bad attitudes. Attitude will either make you or break you. Your attitude is going to make you or break you. Attitude is going to lead you towards healing, or attitude is going to keep you stuck in the trauma and in the wound. The second word I want to highlight in your healing journey would be perception. Perception and attitude are two key components to healing. Your attitude and your perception are key. They are key to this journey of healing and healing well and getting profit from everything that you've been through. What is your perception like? What do you think about it? Like, think about perception. Perception is the way you view things. When you are in agreement to a negative perception, when you agree with something negative, you know what happens? All you're doing is damaging your emotions. When you are in agreement with a faulty lens, you see it in a negative way. All you're doing is there is damage to your emotions and damage to your own thinking that makes you captive to your own self. I'm going to say that again. That's a mouthful. The way you see it has everything to do with your physical body, because you're actually damaging even neuron cells, physically speaking, in your brain. They are shut down. You're no longer in growing mode. So perception, the way you view it, has everything to do with whether or not you're going to heal and heal well. How do you view it? How do you view the divorce? How do you view the loss? Are you maybe looking at it from a focal point that maybe looks at it in terms of just loss? There's this saying, right? Do I look at the glass half full or half empty? That has everything to do with viewing. Maybe your perception of what has happened to you as a child. You now start to go into comparison modes and you compare yourself a lot to others because maybe your view of self has been distorted. And what are you doing? You're just damaging your own emotions. How do you view the divorce? How do you see it? So attitude and perception are synonymous. They're like, because they're a lot alike, because attitude means the way I view it. Perception means the way I see it. So how I see it, reframe it. How do you see it? How do you see the loss? I love and I've got to pause for a moment, whether you are somebody who follows God and serves him and has a relationship with him or not. But I love Jesus as an example in this, because he never sees what is missing. He he sees beyond it. He sees, and he's got these lenses of faith. And that's what faith is, right? It's our viewpoint and how we see. It's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things you can't see. And when he wouldn't look at what was missing. He would look at what was left over. So your perception is very key, because if all you do is have a negative perception, a negative view, a negative focus of what was gone, and now you are mourning what is gone continuously, And I understand there's a season for mourning. So I'm not trying to discredit that season of mourning because there's a time and place to cry as well. But I'm talking about if it's been over a year and a half, and there's still that mourning, the loss, and you can't see anything good out of it, then it demands a pause, a Selah moment in your life, and start looking at, okay, what do you have left over? Because your perception, the way you view it, is going to lead you towards healing. How has your lens been? How has your attitude been? How's your perception been? Because that is going to determine your behavior. And behavior, believe it or not, is going to be a key component to this journey of getting to the other side of this bridge. So if you really want to be restored and you really want healing, which I believe we all do, if we want to see the wound a scar, then we must examine our attitude. Ask yourself, why do I have that attitude? Why do I wake up this way? Why do I have a bad attitude when it comes to this? And then that question, right, can lead you to an answer. And maybe you need to readjust your behavior because there's probably feelings associated with it. And it has everything to do with the lens by where you're looking through. So maybe you're looking at it from a lens of fear. Maybe you're looking at it from a lens of depression. You're looking at it from a lens of no faith. You're looking at it from a lens of doubt. You're looking at it from a lens of no hope, hopelessness, disappointment, a loss of expectation. Maybe your lens is so distorted, and that's why you're stuck and you can't get healed. And so take this time in this podcast to reflect on your attitude and reflect on the way you perceive it. How do you perceive it? And is there some greater good beyond what maybe you're living? Is there something you can't see and you're blinded? We all have blind spots, right? And it takes others to say, hey, you know what? Something good is going to come out of this. You know, I love our God because he says he turns all things around for the good for them that love him. And when you love him, he really does turn things around for your good. And so he's going to use it, and he uses it for something good. I think perception is key. Now, I think this will be for another podcast. I'm going to pause here, but the next podcast, I want to talk about perception because perception has everything to do with our heart's condition. And I think the way we view things, the way we see things, the way we frame things, you know, our behavior towards that situation, our attitude towards it, how we respond, how we react, all of that has to do with our heart and our condition and the condition of our heart. So let's get on this journey of looking within. How's your attitude? Maybe ask other people around you. I don't know, that's a dangerous thing, but maybe ask somebody around you, hey, how's my attitude been? Usually it's your loved ones that live with you, and they'll tell you what your attitude is like. Maybe somebody that's close to you, a friend, ask them, hey, what do you think of my attitude? And that's a good reflection. And perhaps attitude is what's keeping you stuck and it doesn't let you heal. Perhaps it's your perception. Maybe you need to reframe it, look at it better in a positive way. Start jotting it down. What positive things, you know, can come forth from this? And then focus on that. I love you guys. I will see you guys next time. And we will continue on this healing journey.